Hi, hello, and welcome. If you're new and have no clue who I am, my name is Smith Sauer. I'm the CEO of G-PACT, and this is one of our monthly-ish webinars. And in tune with our June challenge, we are talking about the supportive measures and what we can do around the traditional treatment and how we can support ourselves holistically and holistically to give ourselves a little bit more stress support, gut support, and overall health support. So, um, I know I said this before, but as a secondary reminder that we are recording, this does go up on our YouTube channel afterwards. I know we will have a presentation, so you probably won't be seen, but just in case, if you are unmuted and or off camera, that you are on the recording. If you have questions, we will have some time at the end, but if you want to ask them, just throw them in the chat and I will be going through that once we get to that portion. And I will also remind you as a disclaimer that none of this is to be taken as medical advice. This is informational and educational only. And if you do have any questions, I will follow up once the recording is live on YouTube with additional contact information for myself and Shalice if you do have any further questions there. And now I will stop talking and give Shalice the floor to introduce herself and why we're here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chalyce Macoskey. I am a medical assistant, aromatherapy coach, and a naturopathic practitioner. I have been in traditional and holistic medicine over 30 years. I have specialized in digestion challenges for 15, and I created Healing GP Naturally about 16 years ago. I was introduced to it through our co-founder, Kathy Atkins, who was having some major GP issues, and I had created this little protocol and flew out to help her and stayed with her for 2 weeks and just started implementing what I'd been using with my other clients for, years before, and found that it gave her the ability to eat, the ability to get her life back. And when I say this, it's it was her way of eating, little bits of how what would work for her and her lifestyle and get her back into her high pressured position that she was running a printing company. And it made me start thinking about, could we help others? And we formed Healing GP Naturally 15 years ago and just kept implementing simple things that would help improve quality of life with what you were already doing, because it's all about hope. It's all about understanding how our digestion works in relationship to stress, trauma, hereditary, environment, diet. And so I was like, let's do more with this. So we did a study, a very small study, to prove that there was foundation with supporting digestion through essential oils. And it was published on PubMed. So that also helps validate our approach. And what I tell people, my approach is been gathering information for almost 50 years, and it's nothing new. It's just old school information that I've compiled together that works, and 95% of it is lifestyle and learning about emotions and how they affect our eating, and then a small amount of using a homeopathic blends that I created, which in the essential oil field, they say that that is diluting oils, that it's to help cut, make profit. You're cutting your product. But I have studied a long time as far as homeopathic remedies and dealing with my clients over the years, less was more. It's about helping the body on a subtle level, not forcing, not creating more issues. And essential oils is the life of the plant, is the essence of the plant. And it is so, so strong. And when you see these other companies saying, ingest them, apply them full strength, when you deal with someone that is what I call in a fragile state, when you start giving them something that the body really needs, then it's going to start dumping because it's grabbing that, say it's dill or basil, and the body's like, oh my gosh, I have something now that will help with my pancreas, help with the liver. Now I can make more bile. Well, the rest of the body, your kidneys and bladder and your stomach's like, whoa, whoa, wait, what is this? And now the body's releasing the toxins from years of medications and not the right nutrition, and then it overwhelms the body and causes more challenges. So it's about just doing subtle, gentle, slow things to able to support you. And what I have learned with myself, I've never been diagnosed with gastroparesis because there was no such thing of that when I was a teenager. As I was sharing with Samantha, it was called cheerleading syndrome. And what that was is that saying I was an overachiever, I did too much, and that it just upset my stomach. And if I stopped these things, I would be better. But they didn't take into the account that I had been on antibiotics since I was a baby for ear infections and tonsillitis, and they never made that connection. So by the time I was in my early 20s, I was a mess. I mean, you name it, whatever diagnosis was on the market at the time, that's what I had, fibromyalgia, I was on everything you could think of, and I didn't want to keep living that way. And I was very fortunate. I became so ill and someone referred me to a country doctor. I grew up in Arkansas, and she had her master's in nutrition and was an osteopathic doctor. And she took me under her wing and she started teaching me, things. And I was doing vitamin C IVs and such, teaching me about Ezekiel bread, food pairing, time of day of what to eat and when, about, not drinking water before and after and during your meals, just all these little simple things. And, it would stick with me, but I was in such a dire straits that it took me till like my late 20s, because as I started doing better, she's like, get out of here, go learn medicine, come back, work with me. And during that time, I had my son, and it was a very challenging pregnancy. I had gastro issues. I was diabetic, uncontrolled diabetes. So I spent 7 months in the hospital, and I would just follow her at night, with my IV pole walking around learning these things. So I took off the Denver, and, the rest is pretty much history. I had a severe brain injury in a car accident, and that made my digestion worse, where I ended up getting under like 80 pounds because I no longer had the ability to know when I was hungry. I wasn't getting that signal. And so some of the people that mentored me and I went to school with and such, they kind of reined me back in, a homeopathic doctor and stuff, and started reminding me, this is what you need to do. And that helped with, learning how to eat, even though I wasn't getting that message that I was hungry. And then, a few a few years later, I came in contact with Dr. Len Crocker, who I had plateaued with my ability with my speech and some major cognitive issues. And she introduced me to Kundalini yoga, and which was very hard for me, but it taught me about breath. It taught me about unwinding fear. And so for the almost 20 years doing that, I have taken all of those pieces and implemented. I wrote a book a few years ago, but this past year, I updated everything and really sharing the importance of breathing and to let go of the fear, because there's so much fear around eating that we have learned, it's always about the food and our state of mind. So if we're in chronic stress, if we're always, afraid, whether it's with our meds, with what foods are surrounding doctors. I mean, after a while, we become, it's PTSD. We have triggers. We become agitated because everything everybody tells us or promises or said this is going to make us feel better, it doesn't. And it may for a while, but then we still have this cycle going on of not gaining any momentum, and we lose, quality of life. So what I did is, Chinese principles, Ayurvedic principles, traditional medicine, modern medicine, and just said, okay, what can work for me? What can work for people that I am helping? And a lot of it had to do with listening. You have to listen to what people are saying and what that challenge is. Because a lot of times with people, the first time I work with them, I may just say, the first thing you do before you eat is you just take a deep breath. You do left nostril breathing, even if you can only do it twice, and just relax, because that immediately sends that information to our gut, our vagus nerve. Okay, it's all right. I am okay. I'm not being that fight or flight mode of survival. And it's only one bite. I don't have to take another bite, and it'll be okay. And it sounds a little, out there, but once you start doing that and you tell yourself that you're okay, then that is half the battle, because we have not been okay for many years. We have not had the answers that we've had, and we've learned that everything that we'd put in our mouth just made us feel that much worse. I mean, it took me years to realize I cannot drink a lot of water. I have to have it in something, like I do matcha. Um, I will do, what else? I drink a lot of matcha. I drink coconut water, but it has to be room temperature. I can't do ice, and I can't do a lot at once because I instantly get acid reflux. So, I with my, with our group and stuff, I talk about Himalayan salt. because we're told so many times we make too much stomach acid. And in actuality, with most of us, we don't have enough. So when we're having horrible acid reflux and we couldn't figure it out because they're all saying, you got to drink, you got to drink, you got to drink, which is true. We have to stay hydrated, but the way we do it is key. And I found out I cannot drink plain water. It will instantly give me acid reflux. So I put Himalayan salt in my water, the rock Himalayan salt. I put a few in there and I'll suck on it. And the next key thing that I learned, not to eat when I have reflux or, just nausea, that's low stomach acid. So I will just suck on the Himalayan salt till I feel better, till it calms down. I use the oils that I created, and I put them on every 15 minutes in the beginning, because here's the thing, if you eat while you're feeling this way, it's going to make it worse. It's going to be harder to get you back to your baseline. So, just by understanding not to drink with your meals and not to drink before or after, if we have compromised, um, you know, hydrochloric acid and pepsin, then this is another hurdle for us. Just small, simple, little tiny things like this can make a world of difference. And when we have one good moment with eating like that, then our stress levels just start going down and it gives you hope. You're like, okay, I did this. It didn't make me sick. I only ate 5 bites, but I feel good. And there's nowhere anywhere that says in a half an hour you can't come back and have 5 more bites. Because that's the other thing. I cannot eat 3 big meals a day, you know, and there's just no way. But I have learned and adjusted what works for me and what foods. Now that doesn't mean it's going to work for the next person. And that's why, I've created different stuff online. It's called Wisdom by Nature Trainer Central. And it's what it does is it has all these little super tiny micro classes. And I have quite a few that are free that just give you this nice little handout and walks you through these steps. So you're like, oh, yeah, that's me. Oh, I can try that. Oh, I didn't know not to eat fruit until after 3 p.m. I didn't know that melons you eat on an empty stomach, because of the way the stomach digests it. And it's like, oh, I didn't know, I can eat blueberries, raspberries, strawberries all day long because they're low glycemic, little tiny things like this. And it's just about listening to your inner voice telling you that you're okay, and breathing, breathing, listening, and giving yourself permission to feel better, because I was always told, this is as good as you're going to get, with your traumatic brain injury. This is how you're going to be. And I'm like, no, no, because I couldn't drive. Like I said, my speech was horrible. My cognitive thinking was just crap. And I'm like, no, I cannot be 32, 33 years old and this is the end of my life. I'm not, I'm not accepting that. And I just kept digging and learning and, and creating a program that can help others. And that's where I'm at. And that's what this is about. And there's people out there that's just like, oh, that's crazy. It's crazy because it's so simple. And it's because it's using tools that our ancestors have used for thousands of years. and just taking that knowledge and simplifying it, see what works for you and getting you back out there. You know, you learn to find things on the menu when you go out to eat. You learn things when you go to people's houses, what you can, or you bring your own food. I do not feel bad when I go to an event and I won't eat what's there. You know, I do not feel bad for that. I'm not being a snob, but everybody has known me this long, they get it. You know, I don't eat sweets. It horribly messes my stomach up. You know, I cannot eat things that are really not as clean as they can be because any processed food sends me over the edge. And you know, I will sit, I will drink whatever I have or eat whatever I have and converse with people to make them feel comfortable and me not feel out of place or make a big deal about it. You know, and you find over time people let it go, you know, and the more you stand in your truth and do what works for you, that makes you feel better too. So it's about letting go of the stress. And you know, there's a lot more to it than that, but this is my whole approach in a nutshell is breathing, listening, and just understanding what works for you, and there you have it. So, if anybody I love answering questions. I don't really feel real comfortable talking about me. I do better when, you know, when everybody engages because I love to hear what people have to say. Plus, I can't always remember. You know, I am not perfect. Some days I struggle to talk, some days I struggle to eat, but I have these tools, you know, and the next day I'm better. That evening, I'm better. And I just accept how I am and who I am and out there helping as many people as I can. So I'm happy to help anybody and everybody. Okay,
I will
Sam.
I was gonna say, I'll unmute now. So if you guys do wanna unmute, and ask a question, you can, or just type in the chat and then I can ask it. But I do wanna say, just from my experience with Shalice, this is not the first conversation that we have had. Back in our very first, virtual conference, she did a whole, presentation on oils and using them for digestive, I'll say, distress, and supportive measures. And back, my mom actually was the one who found her back when I was first diagnosed, when we were looking for, you know, the traditional things aren't working. So what can we do? What can we have control over? What can we try that is safe, that it might be something that helps, as long as we're okay with it, medical team's okay with it and it's safe, why not give these things a try? And jokingly I said last week to Shalice that my mom was like, "Oh, ask her what my favorite oil was." We can't remember what it was, but there were so many favorites and so many things that we've used over the years and that have been supportive in different measures. So I am all for, as you guys know, who know me and know the conversations that we try to have, that these supportive measures are the things we often forget about. Like Shalice was mentioning breathing, or, in a podcast episode, we talked about chewing our food. The difference between me and my husband, he'll kill me for saying this, when we're eating dinner and why he eats so fast is because I take forever to chew and he just eats very fast, right? So these are the things that can help aid our digestion going forward that we often don't think about, and that we can choose one thing at a time to have it stack into our lives to just give us better chances to go forward and to hopefully feel better. So I will say we've got a couple questions in the chat. Thank you guys. The first is, what essential oils have helped you? So I'm assuming, Shalice, that's to you. If that's to me, please clarify. But Shalice, I'll let you take that to start to maybe talk about the like packages with the essential 7 oils of maybe the basics on where to start with using them.
Yes, I have a collection. They're all the same. There's 7 of them, but I have them like in different sizes and, for babies, children, adults. But what I did is I actually created blends. And blends are very important. And remember, this is homeopathic. So, I mean, there might be um maybe 5% of the blend and the say in gastro, because again, it's about the subtle energy working with the system. So when you just use one single oil, it's not doing a complete system. And in regular medicine, you have to understand how the stomach works with the liver, with the gallbladder, kidneys, bladder, all of that. And so with the gastro blend, it supports the body system, supports, nourishes, and gives it the ability to hold its own, because we're missing that. And with any health issue goes back to the stomach. No matter the health challenge, it's always in the gut. And with the gut, that's tied with emotions. So with GastroBlend, I made sure that it supports kidney, bladder, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, because when those body systems are supported, then they're going to take care of digestion. So gastro is used like before your meals. I have Kate's Happy Tummy, which is actually based on my second client that I had years ago. Kate was an amazing 14-year-old girl who had severe digestion issues. And now she has gone on. I believe she's a nurse practitioner. She may even be a physician assistant by now in Denver, big, and uses a holistic approach just based on her experience. So I have 2 different options. Some people do better with Kate's Happy Tummy that you can use before and after meals, and then the gastro. um, then I focus on emotions. So I tell people use the relax and release before they eat, just inhaling to calm the brain to do. And you'll notice yourself too when you take a breath and wait a moment, you will actually reset, like you'll do that heavy sigh. And that's a good positive thing. There's turmeric in there that I also is blended because it is such a good um, stomach support that I don't want to overstimulate. And so that's like a all over anti-inflammatory, hormone balancing. It's a very good grounding, because a lot of times what happens with us when you don't eat a lot, you're not grounded. That's the reason why you hear about different cultures that'll fast and meditate, because that puts you up, as we say, in the ethers to be more connected spiritually. But to live in this world all the time, you have to have that balance. And turmeric is very good for us to be balanced and to be grounded, because when we're more in the ethers and it's constant, we become very emotional. We let our emotions overrun and we become more into our feels. So the turmeric is grounding, good for food, warming the body. Patchouli, which gets a horrible name as the hippie oil, and it actually does wonders for stomach spasms, calming, and it is grounding, but it does amazing for reflux, combining patchouli and turmeric together does great things for helping with acid reflux, and then combining that with Himalayan salt. So then we have, so that's gastro, turmeric, patchouli, Kate's happy tummy, relax and release. Kathy, sleep easy. So Kathy struggled with sleep, which a lot of that, has to do with trace minerals, not enough protein. But I created a blend for her to use at night, to breathe with, to relax. And that's another one that's in the collection. And then there's the Himalayan salt. But always blended, homeopathically done. That way, if you use a little or you need a lot that comforts you, you're not going to overdo it. And I know there's a lot of digestive oils on the market, and they are not blended down. They are very strong. And I just always say, if you do choose those oils, to barely use them and use a carrier oil, you know, 4 or 5 ounces literally to a drop or two, because it overstimulates. And we're already overstimulated. So why do more? Why push that? So that's what I have for you with the oil collection.
Let's see. And then another thing on the oils is going back to the brain gut connection. And are there specific oils or like a protocol with those oils that you would recommend to help either calm down or and I'm adding to this question a little bit to, make a I'll say better connection between the brain and the gut to get us on the same page?
Yeah, so to get us out of that fight or flight is the
Mhm.
left nostril breathing, using like relax and release. And if you don't want to use an oil, just the left nostril breathing, and breathing in for 8 counts. And you may have to work up, because a lot of times you'll notice the left side will be clogged, and that's because we're stuck in that fight or flight. So you hold off the right nostril, and even if you can only inhale to one, that's a start. And then you exhale through the same nostril, and you just work up to 8. And what that does is that helps reset, the vagus nerve. It helps break that fight or flight cycle and to be calming. So that's why I always suggest that when I have, a client stuck in that fight or flight. And then you can reverse it. If you're tired in the afternoon and need a pick me up, then you hold the left nostril and breathe through the right the same way. And that will help give you a nice little pick me up. The key is, which isn't my benefit because then I'm not selling my product, but less is always more. So I don't always suggesting inhale that oil, do left nostril breathing. Do one or the other if you're in that fragile state. But if it feels right to you and it makes you feel better, then do that. I mean, I had a guy years ago, wanted to get off his antidepressants that was on him for 20 years. And what actually helped him, he hated the smell of lavender, but he said when he carried it in his pocket that he felt better. And so, I mean, there was a whole protocol involved because we worked on diet and he weaned himself off of them. But it's sometimes when a smell that you don't like, that's tied to an emotion. And when you look up that emotion, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so then you understand it. I mean, plant medicine is phenomenal in the way that it works and supports us. But, it is very good to use it with with traditional medicine as well. I am not anti-traditional. I'm all for putting it all together. Sometimes it just needs a little of one or the other.
There's a lovely comment in here, not a question, but saying that they've been following this approach for gastroparesis for about 6 years and highly recommend the topical essential oil blends, and that gastro is a favorite for stomach pain and Himalayan salt is a godsend for the acid reflux. So that is
Oh,
really good to hear. I remember years ago, I used to keep a baggie of the Himalayan salt in the drawer next to my bed, and I would just grab some of it to suck on because it was the only thing that helped at the time, and I wasn't on any other medications, that's just kind of what I took, and it helps, and, like you're saying, and like we've all said that, one thing might not work completely, and that's where these supportive measures can be really helpful as long as we ask the experts, whoever those experts may be, to kind of help us figure out what a protocol works for. Just like regular meds, and we talk about this in other educational content and in our support groups, that what works for one, that exact protocol will not work for somebody else guaranteed. It might, but it also might not. And that's where finding, where your symptoms are higher or lower, maybe where your stress feels higher or lower, where your reflex is, and, tracking those things to help build that protocol is so important. We've got another question about essential oils to increase motility in your stomach. Do you have a protocol specifically for that?
no, it's just my approach with those oils because, again, the way I blended them, as you support those body systems, things will kick in. And I know, Christine, I worked with her over a decade ago, and she's in our GP group, and she will tell you. I mean, she basically had no motility. She was on the couch. They were talking about hospice. She had young kids, and her husband reached out and said, I don't know what to do. They're saying we need to make arrangements for her, and we did a Hail Mary. Now, for her, the oils were strong because when someone is in a crisis like that, you have nothing to lose. And here she is a decade later. I mean, she has grown her own garden. She elderberry. She's traveled the country. She's came and seen me twice. We have, I don't know if it's on our YouTube channel or in our Facebook, but there's an interview with us and her kids. Because after a couple of years she was doing so well, they came down and visited and stayed with me a few days. And so it's about supporting the right body systems, and for some reason, I just, and not bragging, I just have a knack to know how to do that. So when I have new clients or even a customer, if I have a feeling about them, I'll reach out and I will custom blend if I think it needs to be less or a little bit more, and send that with their as their order. So there's not one specific thing, it's the whole thing. But with the oils, they are fine tuned. I mean, we're pushing over 15 years of tweaking those babies.
Yes, they smell good too. Like I said, my mom and I are still hunting down, like, old order forms to try to figure out what the heck oil she used to have because she took it out of, like, the little bundle, and we kept it separate because it made her feel better. And, you kind of walk by, you take a whiff of it, or maybe you put it on, like, your wrist a little somewhere where you can smell it, and it really I feel like it was the relax one, like, just thinking
Yeah,
about what
probably.
she felt with it, it was probably that one, but, we're gonna have to hunt and figure out which which that was to replenish that. And,
Mhm.
I think right now we all know you get really burnout and you might be listening to this saying like this all sounds really good but like I don't want to do something else. I don't want to add anything
Yep.
to my plate. And that's understandable. We all are that way. And I think one thing to take away, and Shalice, I'll ask you this too, but one thing to take away is like if you don't know where to start, what's one thing that we're talking about today of where you could go today or what you could do today for yourself or tomorrow that you could add. Could it be some of the breathing techniques that, we're talking about? Could it be, just acknowledging where your stressors are and where you want to build more supportive systems around those stressors? Do you feel a lot of anxiety when you're going to try to eat something because we're all afraid of these foods making us sick? So, rightfully so, gastroparesis is horrible when you're trying to eat. We all know that. It can make you feel really terrible. So, what can we do to support that? So, you know, I will follow up. I know I said this earlier, but for anybody that didn't catch it, once we are finished and I have the recording and can upload it into our platform, I do have some really good resources and videos from Shalice that I will add into an email and it'll be for everybody. So if you have additional questions or you're like, what was that thing that she talked about? We'll have some different resources in there too. But to ask my very long-winded question, if someone listening is overwhelmed, what would you suggest as a place to start? Like if you were in any of our position, would it be taking the time to breathe, maybe journaling, anything that you would suggest as one thing that won't feel too much to do today?
The breathing is key, is very, very important, and the second is just don't drink before, after, and during meals. If you I mean, those are the 2 things that I tell people, of course, Himalayan salt, but first, just breathe. Breathe before you eat. Stop. Don't stand up. Don't eat as you're running through the house. Don't shovel it in. Just stop because we all do that. I'll catch myself standing and I'll make myself sit, even if it's just a couple of bites of something, because your body is focused on keeping you upright. So sit, breathe, then eat. And then drinking, that is also key. Those 2 things, if that's the only thing that you can focus on, if you can't do the oils, you can't even talk about what you're eating in a day, just do those 2 things to start, because it helps break that cycle. 1, it doesn't dilute your stomach acid, and 2, it breaks that fight or flight.
Yeah, that's helpful as I'm reminded, don't do that, Sam. Because I catch myself doing that too, running or even forgetting to eat. And I know a lot
Yeah,
of us our eating schedules are very different. And we might need to do things differently, smaller, more frequent meals. Maybe we only get one meal a day that we can tolerate, and that's just what
yeah,
works.
yeah.
So these are the things around those meals, around your schedule, around what works for you that can help you in those situations. I've talked a lot about like having you are like a table, right? And you need those supportive legs so you can be strong and you can hold yourself up and you can do the things and handle the things that are being put on top of you. If you've got wiggly legs, your table's going to give out. So these are the things to help strengthen our legs, give us our supportive measures, and really just all around make us feel better in all the parts of us that we can. Because we can't fix everything, but we can set ourselves up for success, and that's really what this is about. Um, I did get another question that says, in speaking on topics of other disease processes, thanks for making me say that out loud, Tammy. Um, I'll start in the gut. What about an approach to help with thyroid issues?
It's about, again, balancing the body system. So you have to look what's stressing the thyroid. I always do it. I go in reverse when I work with people is okay, what got us to this point? Was it environment, emotion, stress, accident, trauma, the food? I mean, there's so many things that we can be exposed to, but just again, starting with gut support, supporting the gut, then, you never know, but I've dealt with thyroid challenges before, with my clients, and I always get them on the same thing with the diet, with the oils, and figuring out, the trigger of that. Because there just could be a lack of something in the body, and as you balance it out, could be inflammation. Something as easy as that. But it's amazing when you do support digestion, how other things start doing better.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's why we all struggle because our digestions.
Yeah.
That's why
And that's
everything
why
starts to go wrong.
diseases escalate with gastroparesis if you don't get back to what I call the basics. Because if your body has no support, then you're going to be diagnosed with more issues and more issues because you're still not supporting that core challenge to begin with.
Yeah, very true. As someone with thyroid issues, I concur. Um, well, does anybody have any other questions? You can feel free to unmute or like I said, if you have a question later and you think of something, you can reach out to me, and I can connect you with Shalice in the meantime. And I did put, if you scroll up in the chat, there are some links there to the book mentioned, the updated version, and the website too, where you can read a little bit more about the oils, see what's offered, and everything there. But um, if not, I'll just talk slowly and let anybody unmute if you want to, but that's okay. Um, but thank you so much. This was such good information. And I think just that supportive arm and the reminder to do the things that we don't think about often is very helpful in itself. And we appreciate you taking some time with us today and everybody else for being here. And like my broken record, as always, I will follow up as soon as everything can upload from one platform into another and then into another, and then it's available for everybody. So
Thank you, Sam, for thinking of me and having me. I love to help others and just make a difference. That's what it's about. So thank you again.
yeah. Oh, thanks, guys. Have a
Bye
good day.
bye.